In this series of slidecasts, we're going to look at cost management. In other words, how do you manage a job to bring it in on budget? Remember that one of the objectives of an engineering project is to bring it in on budget, so you're making a profit. You'll recall that we looked at estimating in the previous set of slidecasts, but what we're going to look at now is the contractor's cost management. So we're not going to look at the consultant's cost management system, but he will have his own cost management system, and it will follow much the same as the contractor's cost management system. So remember that while we're talking about a contractor managing a construction project, it can be much the same process for a consultant managing a design project. So we're just using the contractor's example, the contractor as an example. So you can see that the way the contractor's project starts is during the tendering process. We're talking about a DBB project here, and he looks at the tender document and he thinks, yes, this is a project that I'd like to be involved in, and he will investigate it and he'll put together a tender price. So a lot of his cost estimating is happening when he's putting together that tender price. So a lot of the stuff we're talking about here in the tender price estimate and stuff like this is carried out in the tendering process. At the end of this process, he will have a tender price. He will have figured out how he's going to do the work, what machinery he's going to use, what plant, what people, how long it's going to take them. He will have figured out every cost to do the job, and he'll put that in as his tender price. If he wins the project, then that tender price and that breakdown of that tender price into the schedule items becomes his budget. What the budget is this is the way we need to do the project, this is the costs that we need to do it for if we're going to make a profit, because remember the tender price would have a profit in there. You recall that the risk of cost overruns is mostly taken by the contractor, so the contractor can't go back to the client and say, oh, I underestimated my tender price, I'd like some more money please. The client will say no, and quite rightfully so. So it's the contractor's job to manage the work so that it comes in on the budget for the tender price that he said he'd do it for. And to do that, he will have a costing system. The costing system will be measuring how much it's actually costing him to do the work and comparing that to what he planned to do the work for. So that's what the costing system does. It compares the budgeted amounts with the actual amounts. And if there's a difference, a discrepancy between the two, then the contractor knows that something's going wrong and he needs to do something about it. Or if it's he's doing it for less, then he thinks, well, this is great, I'm doing something really good, and he needs to find out what he's doing really well so he can do it again. So a costing system is really important. Being able to first of all estimate the tender properly, and then control those costs that when you're actually doing the work to so you bring it in underneath the amount that you estimated. That is one of the things for a successful contractor. The other thing is cash flow, that they're getting the money in on time. But being able to estimate the tender, winning it so you're not too high that you lose it because other people are coming in lower, and you're not too low so that you can't do it for the amount of money that you've said, getting it bang on right and winning it. And then once you've won it, being able to control your costs, being able to monitor them, being able to keep a track of them, so that when you have completed the project, you've completed it for what you estimated it for, or preferably below. And that's what makes a successful contractor. And to do that, you're juggling several things. So this diagram down below with the man juggling, you've got cost. So cost is one of those constraints you've got, and the constraint is what you tendered for. But you've also got a certain amount of time that you have to do the project in. And remember, if you run over time, then it's going to cost you liquidated damages. And there's an expected level of performance. You're expected to provide a expected level of workmanship, or high standard of workmanship. So all those three things, you're balancing it. If you want to spend a lot of time making sure you get good workmanship, it's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you more time. So once again, there's another triangle that you need to balance if you're a contractor. So let's look at this in the perspective using this model that we looked at right at the start of the course. Remember, this is the model for a project, the management of a project. During the initiating stages, we have things like setting up the project, getting the letter of acceptance, getting the client saying yes, you can proceed. So once the client has said yes, you have won the project, please proceed, then the planning process starts. In this case, the planning process starts at the tendering stage. So you haven't even got to go ahead to do the project, you're just doing the planning process before you actually do the initiating, which is a bit confusing, I know. But you're estimating the costs and rates. How much is it going to cost us to do this work? And you're developing the budgets, and then from that you do the tender price. Once you've won it, once the client has given you the go-ahead, then you will re-look at all those budgets and revise them according to what resources you actually have. Once the project is underway, you're getting that cost control system in place. You're implementing the work, you're doing the work that you said you'd do. You'll be looking at variations, so you'll be using your budget estimates and things like that. If there's any variations, you'll be figuring out how much they cost. You'll be figuring out how much it's going to cost you to do the work. And you'll be implementing your cost control system, sort of comparing the actual costs of doing the work to what you said it would be in the planning process. And sometimes what you said it would, the actual costs are different from the planned costs, and so you might go through another planning process where you're updating that budget, so that there is a circular iterative element to it. And also, once it's all going on, you're monitoring the costs. Are we bringing it in on time? Are we doing the work for what we said we would? Then at the end, you are looking at how do we go with the cost. What did things actually cost us to do? Did we bring it in on budget? If we didn't, what is a more correct rate or cost? So you'd be putting all that feedback into your database and saying, in future jobs we're going to put this price in for it, not this price. So the closing processes are, you're looking at how do we go on that, how much did things actually cost, and then hopefully next time we'll do it a little bit better. So we're going to look at this cost estimate process in the next slide cast.